guys, and welcome back to the 1D Diaries. As per usual, today's video has nothing to do with One Direction, even though I will be very soon, will be filming a video about One Direction. So for today's video, I am going to be telling you guys my story as an evacuee escaping from the Fort McMurray wildfire. Today's video will actually be sort of a story time video, and I feel like it'll be really long, so I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can through the whole story, but just know that this video will probably be really long, but hopefully it'll be really entertaining and really informative. So without further ado, let's get started with today's story time video. My story starts with me flying out to Fort McMurray. If you guys didn't know, my parents or my dad actually works for the Suncor company, which is like the big oil company there that pretty much sustains the whole town. So my story begins on Friday, April 29th. I believe it was the 29th of April. And basically I flew from Abbotsford to Fort McMurray to be with my parents for the whole summer. And so I landed on the Friday and everything was great, and I met up with my mom and the whole trip was awesome. And then on Saturday I just relaxed, I did nothing, and then comes Sunday. And Sunday it was May the 1st, I believe. And so on Sunday, May the 1st was actually the official date that this wildfire began. But that day, my dad and I went to play tennis, and from there, from the tennis courts, we could totally see there was a humongous cloud of smoke, and there were a ton of airplanes flying back and forth, trying to fight both fires at the same time, and it was kind of like weird and shocking. But the thing is that in Fort McMurray, during the summer months, it gets very dry, it gets very hot, and wildfires are really common. I remember last year when I was living with my parents, wildfires were super common. I remember that the whole city was really smoky, you like couldn't even breathe. Wildfires in Fort McMurray are really common, and so when I saw these two wildfires on that Sunday, I wasn't scared. I mean, I was fascinated by how big these clouds of smoke were, but you could still see the sky. The sky was like bright blue and everything was fine. So then comes the Monday, which is May the 2nd, and just so you guys get sort of a quick timeline, the Tuesday was when we were forced to evacuate. So on the Sunday, the fire started, and then on the Tuesday, we had to evacuate. So basically, on the Monday, the fire got worse, and my mom and I, we went to the center of the city, so the downtown area, because we had to run some errands, and that's when we noticed that the fire was getting worse. I remember that on the Monday, we were running errands, and there was actual ashes falling on the car and falling on us, and we were like, whoa, that's pretty crazy, but I never once feared for my life. Then comes the Tuesday, which is the actual day that we had to evacuate. I remember that on that Tuesday I woke up and I remember that it was so hot, and I put on Snapchat, I put on the degree filter, and it showed that at 9 in the morning it was already 19 degrees. And just so you guys know, the fire that actually spread throughout Fort McMurray, it was sort of it was like a sort of perfect disaster just waiting to happen. On that day, the winds were pushing the fire towards the city, and the humidity was low, and it was really hot. All that combined pretty much just forced this huge fire to spread out all over the city. So basically, I woke up and I noticed that it was extremely hot. And then I went and checked the weather, and it said that there was an air quality advisory because of the smoke in the air, and there was also a heat advisory. I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, today is gonna be really hot, and the air quality isn't good. And with my mom, we actually like to go outside and go for walks and stuff every single day. So my mom was like, okay, if it's gonna get that hot, we better go out for a walk early in the morning so that we can get it over and done with, and then just chill at home all day. So we ate breakfast and we got ready, and it was about 10 a.m. when we went outside for a walk, and it was super hot and the smoke was horrible. Every time you tried to take a deep breath, you couldn't, because you just felt all that smoke in your lungs. And the worst part is that smoke is really dangerous to breathe in. So with my mom, we got really nauseous and we weren't feeling that great. It was about 2 p.m. when I noticed that this huge cloud of smoke was coming towards us. It literally happened in less than an hour. It was like about 2 p.m. and by the time it got to 3 p.m. the whole sky was covered with this huge cloud of black smoke. When I noticed that the cloud was coming in, I wasn't scared, but then my mom was like, wait a second, like this is getting sort of like dangerous, and I was like, no, what are you talking about? But it was around like 3 or 4 that I was like, wait, let me Google this. And so I actually went on Twitter and I saw I follow a whole bunch of like news Twitters, and they were all saying like there was this Fort McMurray fire that was like spreading, and I was like, wait a second, what is going on? So basically I'm checking like the Fort McMurray tag on Twitter, I'm like searching everything, and then people were putting up these horrible pictures of fire spreading. So basically I started to panic, like, you know when you get that feeling in your stomach, sort of like when your stomach drops and you're like, you feel like panicked? Well, that's how I felt. From the moment that I searched on Twitter like Fort McMurray fire, my stomach just dropped, and I don't think like until the next day did my stomach get better, because the whole time I was just like dreading. I'm like, wait a second, what is happening? This is becoming like really serious. During this time, while I'm refreshing Twitter to see what is going on, where the fire was spreading, there was like more smoke covering the whole sky, but this time you couldn't see anything and you could start to see flames. So it was like huge black smoke, and then at the bottom it was like orangey. You couldn't literally see the flames, but you could see like an orange haze. And so as time passed, I started to read that there were actually evacuation orders, and I was like, okay, this is getting like sort of serious. As time passed by, more and more evacuation orders came out, and they were getting closer to where we lived, and that's when we were like sort of like really panicking. And I was like trying not to panic my mom, because I was like, you know, like I don't want to panic her if like there's really no danger. Just so you guys know, my story, I wasn't like that affected by the fire at all. Like where we live with my mom, we were pretty safe. But there were people whose like houses burned down, who like they had like 5 minutes to get all their stuff and get out. Like they literally had no time. All their houses burned down. So as more pictures started to like appear on Twitter and stuff, I started to show my mom, because I was sort of getting like panicked. The houses in front of us were like evacuating. They were like packing all their trucks full, and I'm like, these people are like so exaggerated, like, you know, if anything happens we'll like come back in 2 days or whatever. So at that time my dad was actually working in Suncor, and the company, or the base plant, is like 50 kilometers away from where we live, so like he couldn't really come back home to get us or anything. So we called him. We were like, okay, all these people are packing, they're leaving, should we evacuate, or like should we stay? What is going on? Do you know anything? And he basically told us to like just be ready. And so my mom and I, we like went, grabbed some backpacks that we had, and I read that you had to pack to like survive 3 days. And so I'm like, okay mom, we can take like 2 shirts and 2 pants and like some underwear. My mom also packed a whole ton of food that would literally last us 3 days or even more, probably last us like a week. So we packed food, we packed all our important documents, passports, all that stuff. I packed my computer and all my electronics, and we had all that packed, and we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And by this time, I also remember that the smoke was getting quite thick, and my dad told us to grab a towel and wet it, and then put it over our mouths if we were going outside, like on the balcony. And so I would periodically go outside to the balcony, put this towel over my face just so that I could see, and there was like little ashes falling from the sky. Like, it was pretty scary, but I tried to keep my cool at all times. So basically, I sit down, I refresh Twitter, and then on the first news story on my feed was all of Fort McMurray has been evacuated. And I was like, what the heck? Because then I started to panic, because I'm like, okay, we gotta leave. Like, now it's legit. Like, they gave an evacuation order. Like, now we legit need to get out of here. My mom at that time did not want to leave the apartment, and just so you guys know, we live on the 4th floor of a building, and I'm like, Mom, if we stay here, we are going to be trapped on the 4th floor of a building. This is not a safe area. I didn't know if it was safer to stay in the apartment or leave, but I thought we need to leave. Like, I felt more comfortable leaving just because I felt trapped in the 4th floor of the apartment. And I'm like, Mom, if we stay here, I'm not gonna sleep at all tonight because I was so panicked. I'm like, what if the flames get here? Like, fire spread super quickly. I went back and forth with my mom. I got really mad at her because I wanted to leave so badly. I was really scared. And so it was around like 7 or 8 when the traffic outside actually slowed down and there was literally no cars outside. Everybody that had evacuated, that had wanted to evacuate, evacuated. Like, there was no traffic lines, no cars outside. Like, it was like a ghost town, and that was like really scary because at that moment you don't know, like, should I evacuate it? Should I evacuate with everybody else? Should I stay? Like, my mom called my dad a whole bunch of times, and my dad called us a whole bunch of times, and I'm like, Dad, all Fort McMurray is to be evacuated. What should we do? And I had heard that they were setting up camps for all the evacuees so they could stay. So I'm like, Mom, we could go to a camp. And I didn't think that the fire or whatever, the whole wildfire would last more than 2 days. I literally thought, okay, well, we can just go stay at a camp and then we can come back home in 2 days and it'll be all fine. And so we did leave a lot of things, but luckily we had time to pack. Luckily we had time to think. Luckily we had time to evacuate safely. Like, you know, in that moment, the most important thing is, you know, your personal document and your life. So anyways, it's around 9 p.m. and I'm like, okay, we gotta do something, we gotta leave. And so Dad was like calling people, and he finally got us a room and a camp close to where he works. So I'm like, perfect, now we can totally go out there, be with him, stay like 2 days, and then we can come back and it'll all be a-okay. So I finally convinced my mom that we should leave, and so we grabbed all our stuff. When we got out into the hall, the air was really smoky. Like, there was no visible smoke, but we could really smell the smoke. We head down to the garage. I grabbed the car and I start driving, and when I get out of the apartment building, it's literally like a ghost town. There's maybe like one car on the road, and there's like a whole bunch of cars just left stranded on the side of the road, and it was just very creepy. It was very smoky. You really couldn't see in front of you. It was just a very scary, like, post-apocalyptic scene almost. To get to the camp, I had to make a left, but there was a police car blocking our way, and they're like, no, you have to go right. The problem is, if we go right, then that pushes us south, and south is like where Edmonton is, and we didn't want to go south to Edmonton because we knew that if we were pushed south, then we couldn't meet up with my dad, and then we would all be separated and it would be just a huge mess. So we were forced to go south because the police were there, but basically we drove a little ways, and then we asked another police officer why they had blocked the northern path, and they said that because they had to get like food and some essential supplies to all the base camps that were there, so they had closed the road to traffic. So we were like, with my mom, we were like, shit, what are we going to do? So we parked on the side of the road because we definitely knew that we didn't want to go south towards Edmonton, and we were just sitting there, but the smoke was horrible. Like, even we had all like the ventilators closed, but like obviously in the car there's like, you have to get air into the car for you to breathe, but the air that we were breathing in was so smoky and it was horrible. I felt so guilty because I'm like, it's all my fault because I wanted to get out of the apartment, even though my mom wanted to stay inside the apartment. I'm like, we should have just stayed. Now we can't go back, and we have to stay on the side of the road, and we have to sleep here, and it's smoky. And I felt so bad, and I cried so much because I felt so guilty, because I felt like my mom is my responsibility, and here I am like putting her in danger. It was like 11, 12 at night by the time that we were like sitting on the side of the road, and we were like not the only cars there, so like it wasn't like a scary situation. The fire wasn't really close to where we were, and so we were just like, okay, well, well, try and get some sleep, but I really couldn't sleep because I was so scared. And then you could hear all these police sirens just passing by. There was like over like 200 police cars in the city. It was horrible. So then anyway, some time passes, and I think we were in the car for a total of like an hour to like 2 hours in there. I go on Twitter again, and I see that the road that goes north to where we need to go is actually open, and I'm like, okay. Called my dad. Basically we agreed that I would drive a little bit south, and then I would try and turn around, get back on the north road and go back to the apartment. I was scared there was going to be police cars blocking our way, but luckily there were no police cars blocking our way, and we were able to turn around safely and head back to the apartment. The only thing that really struck me was that as we were like turning around, we passed right next to like the mountain where the wildfire had spread to, and we could see like all the fire, and it wasn't like a huge fire, but you could still see a little fire, and there was like burnt trees, and it was just so hard to look at that because it felt like you were watching like an HD movie. Like it didn't feel real. And as I think back on it, like when you're in that moment, none of that feels real. Like it's like, what the heck is happening? Like this isn't my life. This isn't really happening to me. And it's just that image is like burned into my head. Not to use that pun, but it was burned into my head, and I'm like, wow, like it felt so surreal. It felt like we were watching a movie, and it was just so sad. And it's just like, by that point we didn't want to go like meet up with my dad because we knew that we were relatively safe in the apartment. So by that time it was already like 1 in the morning, and so with my mom we decided to go to bed, but I was petrified of being in the apartment because I felt so claustrophobic. I'm like, we are gonna get trapped if anything happens overnight. And when you're sleeping, you're not alert to anything that could potentially happen. What if this fire spread to where we lived? We didn't know. I went to sleep, but I couldn't sleep because I was so nervous. And every time I closed my eyes, I would hear like sirens, and I thought, oh my gosh, the firefighters are coming. And to this day, I don't know if like that was actually real or if I made it all up in my head, but I could hear these sirens, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't sleep. So I went to my mom's room, and I'm like 21. But in that moment, you feel so like scared and so scared for your life that I just needed her safety and her company. And so I went and I slept with my mom. And even then I couldn't sleep. So it was about 2 in the morning when we finally fell asleep from pure exhaustion. And I'm like, I better sleep now, because if we have to leave anytime soon in the morning, then I'd rather have some sort of sleep. We fell asleep, but it was horrible sleep. Like it was tortured sleep. I couldn't be calm. Like, you know, when you sleep, you have to sort of be calm to really relax. But I couldn't be calm because I was so scared. And then finally, it was 5 in the morning when my mom got up, and I was like, okay, that's fine. My mom is up. If anything happens, she's awake and she can wake me up. Well, it was probably like around 5:30 when she woke me up. I don't even remember what she said, but she woke me up and she's like, we gotta get out of here. And I was like, I woke up, I had like 3 hours of sleep, but I was perfectly fine. I was like, okay, let's go. And so we grabbed all our bags, we grabbed all our backpacks. The thing is, like, I was so like, you know, shaken awake. I didn't realize what was happening. But what was happening was that outside the window, the smoke got super heavy. Like, you literally could not see a thing. And that's when we started to panic, because we were like, this smoke is coming in, the fire is coming closer. And that's when my mom really panicked, and that's when she realized we did have to get out of there. When we got out into the hallway, this time the smoke was visible. The smoke was visible in the hallway. Like when we had left the apartment earlier, you could only smell the smoke, but now the smoke was visible inside of the apartment. And I was like, that's when I realized we gotta get out of here, and we don't have much time to get out of here. We got out of there, we took the elevator down, and I got into the car, and I literally drove with one hand on the steering wheel and one hand holding the towel, the wet towel, to my face because the smoke was horrible. And so I'm driving with like one hand on the steering wheel. There's like literally no cars, and it's so smoky you can't see like a meter in front of you. It was horrible. Luckily, this time we were finally able to head up north because we were going to meet up with my dad finally. I'm driving with like one hand covering my mouth, and it's like completely isolated. I get on the highway and there's like cars on the side of the road, and it was just like super surreal. And I drive like 80 kilometers to where my dad works, and my dad had actually stayed at a camp for the night. And so he had stayed at that camp for the night, and we met up with him there, and we had breakfast, and the air was much clearer, and everything felt a little bit more safer because we were finally out of the apartment, which I wanted to do all along, and we were finally with my dad. And so when we got to my dad's base camp, we had breakfast, and he told us that they were actually flying people out of Fort McMurray. They were flying them to Edmonton or to Calgary, and so we were like, wow, that's great, we need to get out of here. And I remember that before we had even left the apartment for the first time, I had just broken down into tears because I didn't want to leave Fort McMurray. I was there for 4 days, just 4 short days, and I didn't want to leave because I didn't want to leave my dad behind. I didn't want to like leave my city behind, even though like, you know, I live most of the time here in Vancouver. I love Fort McMurray. I go there in the summers, I go there in the winters. It's like given me such it's given me such like great memories and such great experiences. And so it was really hard leaving the city and just leaving it all behind because like that's like your second home, and like it just has so many memories tied to it. So anyways, my dad told us there were flights that would get us out of Fort McMurray, and I was really sad because I didn't want to leave my dad behind, but I knew that that was the best thing to go. And I think like by that point we realized that this fire wasn't just going to be like a 2-day thing or a 3-day thing. It was like literally going to be like a really long-term thing. My dad then drove us like another like 80 kilometers north, and so then Suncor, which is where my dad works, they have like this like little mini airport, and they were flying people out from there. My dad didn't really know like what was going on or how like the airplane situation was, but we took our chance and we drove up there like 80 kilometers north. So we got there, and then my dad asked like the people like, okay, we want to get a flight, like what's going on? And they're like, all flights are canceled. And that's when we were like, shit. Throughout this situation we were like, okay, did we do the right thing? Like, should we have left the apartment? Should we have stayed? Should we have gone to a camp? And when we got to there and we heard that the flights were canceled, we were like, should we have driven all the way here? Why didn't we like stay back or whatever? And I forgot to mention that by this time my dad knew that he was going to stay there. They told him that he was going to stay there to work. So we knew that my dad wasn't going to come with us, and he's actually been working there the whole time that this fire has been going on. Like, he's one of those people that are really important, and he's been keeping like the whole company running. And it's kind of like amazing, but it's kind of like really sad. So all the flights were canceled, and we were like, what the heck are we gonna do now? And so we were like, okay, we can like wait a couple of hours and see, maybe they can get us a flight there. Maybe they'll start to bring in more airplanes. Maybe things will change. And then my dad was finally decided that he's like, okay, well, we should just get a room here, and if all the flights are canceled, then maybe we'll just stay here for a couple of days and see if we can get you out on a flight really soon. And we were like, okay, because I was exhausted and I wanted to sleep. So my dad got us a room there, and it was actually such a nice room. And just so you guys know, these base camps were so nice. They had a ton of food. They like provided for you. Everybody was really nice. We were in such a blessed situation. We were so lucky to be like always in such comfort. So anyways, we got the room and we had lunch, and then I just passed out. My dad and I, we both passed out because we were so tired. I slept for like 2 hours and like we were watching TV and my mom was on the computer. We had to resign ourselves that we were going to stay there for a couple of days, but we were okay with that because this facility had like an exercise room. It had like a movie theater room. It was like super nice, and we were like, well, if we have to stay here, then it's not the end of the world. While I was sleeping, my dad actually went out of the room to grab some stuff that we had left behind in the car, like toothbrushes and all that. When he came back, he actually told us that they were flying people out, but that they would leave in like 15 minutes. And so we were like, oh shit, like this is our best chance to get out of here. Let's pack everything and let's get out of here. Went to like the lobby area, and then we signed up so that we could get on like the next plane out of there. A huge bus rolled in and we all got into the bus, and that bus drove us to like an hour and 20 minutes away, which is where like this mini airport was located, and that's where they were flying people out. The hardest part about that whole thing was that that's where we actually left my dad behind. And it was really hard because when the bus came, we like everybody just got like packed into there really quickly, and you couldn't really say goodbye to, like, I couldn't really say goodbye to my dad. It was like super quick. Like, I was so grateful of everything my dad had done for us. I was just so sad to leave him behind. My mom didn't even get to say goodbye to him, so it was like super hard. But anyways, we got on the bus, we said goodbye to my dad, and we got to the airport. It was so interesting when we actually got to the airport because like we didn't, like, some people didn't have IDs or anything, so they asked us, where do you want to go, Calgary or Edmonton? And we told them we want to go to Calgary. They didn't even check our IDs or anything. Like, people could bring pets on board, like you could bring anything you had on you on board. We waited a couple of hours at the little airport because they were waiting for more people to come in so that they could fill the airplanes to their full capacity. But it was around 7 p.m. when we finally got on the airplane. It was like a really nice airplane, and it's like a very expensive airline, and my mom and I, we actually got to sit like in the front rows in the first class area. Such a tragedy that we had to go through all that to experience going on like first class nice airplane. We got on the airplane. There was like animals on board and everything, and so we finally got out of there. And when we left, my mom and I just broke down crying because we were so sad, just everything that had happened. We finally had a chance to just like reflect, and so we just cried and cried and cried as we saw, like, I saw the whole city burn right in front of my eyes. Like, I could see the aerial view. Just so you guys know, like, for like 3 days after, I just cried and cried and cried. Like, I'm such a sensitive person, and it was so horrible just seeing everything. So anyways, we were able to catch this airplane. It took us to Calgary, and in Calgary we like sprinted, we like booked it. And we booked a flight to Vancouver or the Abbotsford area, where I had texted my sister that we were flying in. We got on the airplane and we were home by 11 p.m. So just so you guys know, literally this whole nightmare began like at 2 p.m. on the Tuesday, and then by Wednesday at like 12 p.m. we were finally home. And I just want you guys to know that it was just such a traumatic experience. Luckily, we were so lucky that we got out of there so fast. We're so lucky that we have a home here in Vancouver. My sister was waiting for us. We're so lucky that we didn't have to like spend weeks at a camp. And just so you guys know, there's still people in camps. There's people like graduating, people who's like had weddings. Like, it's just been so crazy, but I'm so blessed that I got out of there as quick as I did, safely, without any hassle. Like, it was literally like a dream. Like, our evacuation, my mom's and I's, we were like, it was like a dream evacuation, if there's such a thing. But you know, there's so many people out there who are still struggling. Luckily, over 88,000 people were evacuated safely and soundly. Life is just so unexpected, and it can just like creep up on you one day, and you're just like, dumbfounded by everything that happened. As of right now, we don't know when we'll be able to go back, but I've been doing really great because I have a home here, and my mom and I were safe, and my dad is actually with us right now because he's visiting, so everything is well. I'm doing really well. But thank you guys so much for watching my story time video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I feel like this is gonna be hella long. Thank you guys so much for watching all my videos, subscribing and supporting me. It really means a lot. If you guys have any questions or anything that I didn't cover, please ask me down below. I am more than grateful to answer all your questions or anything you're curious about. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you love me, then please subscribe to my channel. And I love you guys. The universe loves you and One Direction loves you. And until next time, this has been a scary time story on the 1D Diaries. And bye!